Hi, my name is Akiyo Tani, and today I'm here to tell you why Web3 is our compelling future. So, blockchain, cryptocurrency, and decentralization. These are all terms that we've heard on the internet, and some in questionable ways, including Tesla accepting bitcoins for payment, and Facebook ads of their next metaverse. So, what really is Web3? Is it just about a picture embedded in code online, like this one here? Actually, it's far more than that. Web3 is a way for us, as users on the internet, to have control over what we share with them. So you might think at this point, how do we necessarily use these technologies in Web3 to create a new form of the internet and society? So before we go into what Web3 is, let's talk about what Web 1 and Web 2 are, so you get a better example of what the previous generations were like. Web 1 are basically self-hosted URLs, or things like blogs that you can technically read, but you can't actually put an opinion on. In a broader sense, this would also mean things like televisions or newspapers. Web 2 are the social networks that we use in our lives today, and the ones that we use to talk with our friends. However, Web 3 is an iteration of the internet that allows us to have blockchain technologies in our world today, using technologies like user governance, decentralization, and tokenomics. So that was a pretty long line, and pretty technical too. I'll give an example of what a Web 2 transaction is like, so you get a better example of what Web 3 can do and what it can do to change it. Let's say you have an old sofa at home that you've been wanting to sell forever. Usually, most people would want to sell this on a platform. And in this case, for Chinese people, it would probably be Xianyu, or in American, it would be something like Craigslist. Now, in order to sell, advertise, and actually find a buyer for the product, you have to put two pieces of key choice into these platforms. One of which being, one, your personal information, and two, a trading fee for the platform. However, you can't necessarily go around these, as these are basically requirements for the platform to keep running. And people centralize to these platforms in order to actually sell their things. Now let's have a more similar example, but something that is based more on the internet. Let's say you found a new job at a school, and you want to find a coworker's name. You usually look up their name on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Google, and you'll get relevant search results. But in this process, when you get the contact, have you ever thought about what you've been giving these platforms? You give these platforms your login data, and your cookies, basically packaged data of your information. However, we cannot go around these systems as we are too reliant on them in the reality today. So, the concept of Web3 defeats these past infrastructures and leads us to something new. It is a digital renaissance of data and privacy. Think about Meta, basically Facebook, who's exposed of having stolen data from users and then sold it to other people without permission. Do you want pictures like this, with you and your friends, to be sold on the internet in places where you don't want them to be? I suppose not. So in the simplest way possible, how do we make everything public but also private at the same time to things that we want to share with certain people? The answer is Web3. Data in Web3 is end-to-end encrypted, with networks being across boundaries of code worldwide instead of in one centralized location. So this is an example of a transaction in Web3. And I'll explain how this differs from something in Web 2. There are three key factors of this that make it different. One is that it is privately public. What does this mean? This means that you, the sender, and your friend, the receiver, will be completely anonymous in this process. But being public means that this transaction is available for everyone to see on the internet. This means that they can prove that it is true while not actually knowing your real identities. And that leads us to our next point, zero-knowledge proofs, which I'm pretty sure most math teachers may know here. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. Essentially, this entire transaction is like knowing 50 different languages and having 50 different books in these languages, and not actually being able to decode them unless you know these languages. So, zero-knowledge proofs. What do they do? And why are they important to Web3? They basically show that something is true without showing the data behind it. And I'll give two examples here so you get a better understanding of what that is too. I'm sure everyone has heard of the children's book, Where's Waldo, where you're trying to find a character called Waldo on a children's book page. Now, if I were to apply a zero-knowledge proof to this would mean that I cover up everything except Waldo itself. That means that I show you that Waldo is there, and I prove that Waldo is there without sharing anything around the page. This would go for the same for Harvard acceptance. Say I work really hard in school and I get a 4.0 and I get great extracurriculars. That would result in a Harvard acceptance, probably. And in this process, my efforts are being recorded on the blockchain. So that means that in order to verify my Harvard acceptance, I could basically just send my efforts through a proof on the blockchain instead of having to show my Harvard acceptance to you. This means that we can connect these things to social media posts, online connections, and more, where we have the right to decide what we want to share, what we want. Now, think about recent events like the Silicon Valley Bank crash. They were in charge for half of the startups over the US. Could things really have been different if they had followed the guidelines of Web3 of trust, transparency, and accountability? If they had been completely transparent about what they had done with the money that was given to them? Let's think about that for a bit. Now, the whole name of this event is to dare to change. And I believe what Web3 dares to change is transparency. Think about our governmental systems today. They're so scared that crypto will take over the world, that crypto will do something bad. But what are we really trying to do with Web3 technology? We're simply trying to have transparency for ourselves. If we really want to revolutionize into a new age of the internet, where we have our own power, then we must stop monopolizing society for technological advances and be transparent with everyone. Thank you.